Just looking at teaching stand 3, demonstrates good subject and curriculum knowledge. So just looking at my start point, when I did my subject knowledge audit at Christmas, athletics was identified as level 2. So knowledge was quite good. However, there's still room for improvement, and that was shown throughout this term in half term, and I did improve my subject knowledge greatly. However, it's just showing how the improvement of my subject knowledge has allowed my students' progress to be enhanced. So just looking at another start point, it's a target me and my mentor set, just to show that my subject knowledge could have improved slightly. So going down here, we're looking at TS3, which is obviously here, to ensure my subject knowledge is enhanced in athletics, to ensure I deliver the necessary TS7 requirements. So I said I'll do this by observing a variety of lessons within my non-contact time to upskill myself, which will be evident by an increased subject knowledge within my lessons. So that's a target which I focused throughout this week, and mainly at increasing athletics was key for me. Just looking at the importance of subject knowledge, Husband and Peers suggests that when teachers have the required subject knowledge, their teaching pedagogy is likely to be enhanced, as they have a clear idea of the points they are portraying to their students. So just using my action points here, that I knew coming up, I had a shot put lesson I needed to shot put lesson I needed to increase. So I ensured I went out and watched a variety of shot put lessons, and here was one from Year 8 lesson, and it allowed me to pick up a number of key teaching points, which was then implemented into my planning and delivery of my shot put lesson. So ensuring that we got the clean palms and dirty neck, something key which students were able to remember. Just looking at developing that shot put technique, and just also ensuring we've got all the safety requirements, and ensuring that I was familiarised with those before I started and went off to teach shot put on my own. So just looking through the athletic scheme of work, which shot put is here, also allowed me to develop my subject knowledge and again pick up a number of key teaching points again, which is dirty fingers, clean palm, which how we're looking at how we can generate power throughout the lesson, which I look to through my teaching. So it's just looking at a number of ways of how I increased my subject knowledge. So it was through my scheme of work and observing a variety of lessons, and also taking part in after school activities also allowed me to develop that subject knowledge, as we had it every night. So the importance of increased subject knowledge is essential for educators to recognise the importance of enhancing our practice to ensure we facilitate the learning of our students. Bevis, Jordan and Perry in 2011, also Levine 2013, Nelson, O'Brien, IBN 2014 and Sharp was 2013. To be on that, Lorahan 2013 supports this, suggesting that it is important for teachers to facilitate the learning of their students by developing their personal pedagogy. So allowing me to develop the pedagogy as I suggested by looking through the schemes of work, observing lessons, helping out with after school at clubs, hopefully had an impact on my student, which we'd look to go on to discuss now. So looking at, here's a lesson plan I used. So in that, I identified that I was going to use a RAG throughout the lesson. So I identified a student's prior knowledge at the start of the lesson and compared to it at the end. And it's just looking at here how we look to compare the student's subject knowledge of the shot put, and hoping how my subject knowledge was transferred to the student to enable them to develop and use the shot put technique. So I've got my lesson and reflection there. So just looking here, what went well in the lesson, students were set into mixed ability groups to aid more able, helping the less able while supporting through a RAG. So I had a worksheet also, which you'll go on to see just here, which students had access to, so with a number of coaching questions. So the students were able to support each other's learning, so it wasn't just me telling the whole time. They had that guided discovery approach, and also was able to develop and help each other out throughout the lessons. It weren't just tell a variety of different feedback that way. The level of the lesson was suited to less able and supporting them. Students progressed from starting from a sitting position Oh yeah, so throughout the lesson, so I'm just going to look at it. If we look at the learning objectives first, it was to evaluate the effective ways to throw a shot put, to apply the technique of shot to enhance our effectiveness of our throws, to know how we generate our power. So looking at the knowing how we generate our power was something which I used as I actually got them started from a sitting position and progressing onto to their knees and finally into a throw-in, and then looking at developing their throws against records. So allow them to generate their technique from a isolated sitting position where they're looking at from our sitting and kneeling position, which is looking at the top two questions, which I got the students to look at. So are they holding the shot correctly? Are they placing it under their chin and neck? To ensure it wasn't just straight in. For if it was quite a number of the students, it wasn't just too much to grasp right away. I broke it down specifically. So just looking at, here was the rag what I used. So red, I've had very little experience and know how to throw a shot. However, I'm prepared for the chat to change by the end of the lesson. Amber, I know some of the key points, or I cannot confidently explain or apply the required technique. Hope to increase by the end of the lesson. And green, I'm confident I can apply the technique required for the shot, and I can also tell another person of how they can improve. So I did actually take a photo of the students. However, my school would not allow me to put photos in, so I just used the photo to back in the office place my students in the rag where they were. So here's our rag. Again, it was just in the PDF format, just so we can clearly identify the students. So after that, I used the pie chart to gain a representation of the students. So it was 78% of the group were amber, 16% were red, and just 6% in green. So it's each student, just to bear in mind, each student works about 6%. So looking after the lesson, after my teaching, after I'd used my resource and my teaching to develop, looking at how they progressed on after, we can see that a lot of the students have moved up. Where we only had one student in green, there we've got, I think it's about 18 in a group of 20. So the students did progress up from my teaching. That's it, from my increased subject knowledge, which we can look at further in detail if you would like. So looking here, we've got our student again of just our rag of what our students use, and then looking at the pie charts we've got from let me just quickly go up. We had we had 78% in amber, and now there's only 12%, and 88% actually in green. So there's only, said each student 6. There's only two students out of the group. So 12% of the actual group didn't actually feel they were able to confidently apply all of the technique and also tell someone else. So that's quite good progress from the students. So just looking at the feedback from the lesson, because this is actually an observation lesson from Alan. Just going down. So although you had identified that your subject knowledge was not a particular strength in athletics, you still developed a good shot put lesson with confidence, with aspects of delivery and teaching acceptable for Year 7 lessons. Many were able to confidently replicate the demonstrations they did and also use effective shot put coaching sheets. Yes, just showing that I did there. So looking at the impact of increased subject knowledge, become apparent that improving my knowledge enabled me to improve my teaching. Husband and Pierce 2012 suggests that effective pedagogy arises when teachers have the required knowledge of the topic in question and have the clear knowledge of why they are doing what they are, leading to constructive learning, which allowed me to allow my students to make progress. So enabled me to increase that challenge. It did have a massive impact as I could deliver all the teaching points and the students were able to develop effectively and make progress throughout the lesson. So here's just my references list if you'd like to have a look, and any other the documents will be up on my portfolio, so feel free to have a look through.